Hello, and thank you for watching the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Explained webinar series. I'm your host, John Malanca, and welcome to webinar 1 of 7, Understanding the Basics, Common Terms, and Uses. This 7-part webinar series was created to answer the most common 53 questions from the 1,532 total questions we did receive during the docuseries. These questions are from people just like you who need answers to their pressing questions on how to get access and how to use a sacred plant safely and effectively. My wife Corinne and I, in partnership with the Sacred Plant Company, have created an incredible 7-day series jam-packed with the most cutting-edge information from seasoned healthcare professionals and industry experts who are at the forefront of the medical cannabis industry. You'll learn specific how-to information and even more truth about this miraculous healing plant, knowledge that can have a life or death impact for you, your loved ones, and for people everywhere. Today we're going to dive into understanding the basics and common terms and uses of the sacred plant. We presented so many different terms in our docuseries, The Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Exposed, and a lot of them have similar meanings that can get confusing. This is why we decided to start this 7-part webinar series by explaining the basics and common terms and uses. So please enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Explains webinar series. My name is John Malanca. I'm your host and advocate and co-creator of Healing Secrets Explains webinar series. And I'm here with my wife, Corinne Malanca, also the co-creator of Healing Secrets Explains webinar series. Hello, Corinne. The topic here, understanding the basics and common terms and uses. Corinne, I think we should start off with the first topic or first term, the word cannabis. So take it away.
Cannabis, the word cannabis, we decided to use at the get-go almost 7 years ago, and we find that it's a way of elevating the industry. It is the scientific term of the plant, cannabis. It seems that the naysayers in this industry, or the people who are reluctant to believe or want to read any science, really reflect on the words marijuana, weed, pot. You see it in the media all the time where pot is in a hospital, or it's a derogatory term. And in order to do our part, and you can do it as your part as well, to bring this industry and this field to where it should be as a medicine, as research, human trials, the word cannabis is best to use, the scientific term, because there is science behind the cannabis plant.
Talking with your doctors and your medical professionals, using the word cannabis, I know marijuana has a bad stigma to it, and a lot of people are put off by the word marijuana. And I think starting the conversation with cannabis and using that throughout conversations with your families, with your friends, and your doctors is a great way to start. So,
I was just going to say, when people hear the word marijuana or weed or pot in the physician setting, the first thing that comes to most people's mind is smoking pot and recreational and getting high. And that's what we're trying to reverse. And it's funny that John and I, many times people ask us, what do we do for a living? And when we talk about education in cannabis science, I'm surprised that so many people say, cannabis, what is cannabis? And then you say marijuana, oh yes, pot. And it's like, no. It's a different field. It's medicine, but okay. So I always thought that was funny that a lot of people don't know the word cannabis.
So before we move on, I just want to simplify it. So here in the U.S., when people talk cannabis, marijuana, they're talking about the cannabis plant. When you hear hemp, they're talking about the hemp plant. When you get out of the United States into Europe or Canada, when you hear the word hemp, many times, not always, but many times when they say hemp, they're talking about cannabis or marijuana. So always ask, depending on what circles you're in or who you're talking to and where you are in the world, are they talking about the hemp plant, which is hemp, and we'll get into that here shortly, or the cannabis plant. So let's go on to cannabis oil. And I know cannabis oil throughout the docuseries was brought up quite a bit. It was called cannabis oil. It's called FECO oil, FECO. It was also called full extract cannabis oil. And it was also called RSO in the series, as well as Rick Simpson oil. So, Corinne, will you touch up on that, please?
So in a little more in depth about cannabis oils, a lot of people use the term RSO or Rick Simpson oil as a general term for cannabis oil. And this is where we need to be more specific because we're treating specific conditions. There's many different formulations and potencies that are required for specific diseases or even individuals. So to be more specific, Rick Simpson oil is one formulation, 4-to-1, 4 parts THC, 1 part CBD. In their cannabis oil, they have a very specific extraction method, and they also have a very specific dosing protocol, one specific dosing protocol. We know now, science has come far enough that we know now that each condition is treated differently in addition to each patient. We mentioned this in the series that a full medical intake is required to come up with the proper formulation and dosing and potency for that specific individual based on medical history, drug-to-drug interactions, supplement to cannabis interactions possibly. So we don't say RSO or Rick Simpson oil because that's a very limited formulation and dosing and extraction method. FECO oil is the term we use, full extract cannabis oil, which refers to the gamut of formulations and dosages in cannabis oil in general. Fecal oil also covers the various extraction methods. I know you were just going into the next question, which had to do with the different extraction methods.
So before we go, I just want to let everybody know in episode 6, we will be bringing on a oil maker, how to, I guess, safely make it if you're forced to make it yourself. They're showing you certain extraction methods and how to make it. So that will be coming up in episode 6. Back to the RSO and Rick Simpson. A lot of times you'll hear the terms 4-to-1, 2-to-1, 8-to-1. Always ask, tomato. It's always ask if that 4 or the first number is THC. So a THC dominant is 4 parts THC, 1 part CBD, which my father-in-law Stan was on and is still continuing to use to this day. So 4 parts THC, 1 part CBD. Sometimes a lot of companies will say 4-to-1, and they will interchange that, and it'll be 4 parts CBD to 1 part THC. So some people will say 4-to-1. They mean 4 parts CBD to 1 part THC. When we're talking right now about my father-in-law's medicine, his was 4 parts THC to 1 part CBD. So a lot of people get confused. A lot of people find themselves in a predicament by overdosing and over-medicating themselves, thinking that they are getting a 4 parts 4-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC when they're actually getting a 4 parts THC to CBD. So just wanted to clarify that before we moved on as well.
CBD first, and I've heard THC first. So I'm not sure if there's a protocol or a specific way we're supposed to be saying it, because I've heard each different doctor saying, oh, no, it's definitely this, or oh, no, it's definitely that. So just clarify always.
So yeah, so always ask, and that will be brought up again in episode 6 as well. Mm-hmm. So CBD, which you're hearing a lot in the news today, is cannabidiol, CBD, Charlie Bravo David. You have THC, tetrahydrocannabidiol, for THC, which is the psychoactive. THC has been proven to kill cancer cells. CBD has been proven to stop the spread. So a formulation of the two, they work together, and that's called the entourage effect. And I'll leave that into you with the entourage effect.
And the entourage effect is extremely important. Many studies show that when all the cannabinoids, whether it's the THC and the CBD or the subcannabinoids, which are, I should have had them all listed, but CBG, CBN, THCA, CBDA, I mean, the list goes on, but they're all in the cannabis plant and they work in concert with each other. I think I've mentioned that before. So the entourage effect and understanding the fact that you need whole plant treatment as opposed to single molecule treatment is very, very important in terms of healing. So we say either the entourage effect or all the cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, subcannabinoids working all in concert with each other. It's just very important to understand they work very, very well together. You want the best and most efficient application of cannabis possible for your body and your condition. So please take that to heart.
Another one that to take to heart as well is, let's talk about the endocannabinoid system. All mammals have it.
It's a system in our body. It's just like we have a digestive system, a neurological system, we have an endocannabinoid system. And we can have deficiencies in that system. I sometimes correlate it to diabetes. You have a deficiency, you have to take insulin. So with the endocannabinoid system, many times when disease creeps in, we have a deficiency, and feeding our body with cannabinoids is very effective in bringing the body back to homeostasis. That's what cannabinoids do, and they work literally like a puzzle piece. You have endocannabinoids within you have phytocannabinoids within your system, and cannabinoids fit like a perfect puzzle piece when needed for disease and treatment, balance of all systems. So the endocannabinoid system, I mean, we could really spend 2 hours talking about the science of it. I'm trying to be extremely simplistic. And the endocannabinoid system and cannabinoids, they all work within the receptors in our body. We have receptors throughout our body, more so in the brain. But this is all very, very scientific.
We will be bringing this up in episode 4 with Dr. Bonnie Goldstein that will be with us too. So she is one of our favorites in this industry and a good dear friend as well. So she will be speaking about the endocannabinoid system, the entourage effect, as well as dosing. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
It's interesting that we've known of this system for over a decade, and it's still not taught in medical schools or nursing schools. We know of it. It's proven. It's not anecdotal evidence, yet it's still not taught in medical schools and nursing schools or pharmacy schools. Very, very sad to know this, and we're pushing for schools to have this in their curriculum. And
we're already in a few different colleges here in California, and looking to take it nationwide as well for education. Next topic. Would you like to go into terpenes?
Okay, yes, I'd love to touch on the topic of terpenes. I wrote a few notes here. Terpenes are fragrant oils secreted in the flowers in the cannabis plant in the sticky resin glands. And so terpenes are basically what you smell in the plant, but they have medicinal value. They have quite a bit of medicinal value. So I could go through a few. There's myrcene, which is for sleep and relaxation. There's limonene, focus and elevated mood. Caryophyllene, arthritis, autoimmune. Gastrointestinal protectant properties. Pinene for alertness and asthma. And linalool, anxiety, anticonvulsant, antidepressant. So we find that when doctor is treating a patient and they're not getting much result from what we see in this specific formulation, let's just say for epilepsy or a certain cancer, they can tweak or add a specific terpene and get a much more efficiency within that treatment. So terpenes are very important. There are companies now in the U.S. who are literally providing terpenes to product makers so that they can actually customize these oils specific to patients and their needs, and to be able to up the efficiency of that medicine that they're taking. So terpenes are extremely important. I really do want to go over this. You said episode 6?
Episode 6.
Yeah.
They will talk about
yes, it's a very, very important topic. They are non-psychoactive, but they do work medicinally. So very, very important.
A lot of times when we go into, I'll say, retirement communities and talk about medical cannabis, and we always ask the room how many people think the only way to consume medical cannabis is via smoking. And you'd be surprised at how many people raise their hand. I'm going to say 60% of the room will raise their hand thinking that, which leads us into the different types of applications for medical cannabis. One, yes, there is smoking. There is vaporization. There are tinctures, sublinguals, in both tinctures and sublinguals in the mouth, under the tongue. Nowadays, they have topicals for arthritis, non-psychoactive. Nowadays, they also have patches that you can put, transdermal patches. My father-in-law used an oil under his tongue, which again was the fecal oil. And still, the jury is out, but a lot of patients will use and have seen success with suppositories, medical cannabis suppositories that come in different formulations as well. So again, like I said, that is, the jury's still out on that. But us personally, we have seen people that have had success with suppositories. So there are many different ways and applications to get cannabinoids into your system. Mm-hmm. Smoking is not the only way. So I just wanted to let people know that as well.
And, yes. And not only is smoking not the only way, we don't recommend smoking. We recommend vaporization when needed. People do use that application for immediate pain relief,
sleep, and where you don't have to wait for an onset 30 to 40 minutes later, if not more. So I just wanted to make that point about vaporization and versus smoking.
And I forgot about edibles. Some people call it medibles. They come in anything from chocolate chip cookie, a brownie, popcorn, popsicles. What am I missing? Lollipop lozenges. So a lot of patients like this. A lot of seniors actually like this because they're used to taking one pill a night, and they're able to take one either popcorn kernel. You don't need a lot. 2 to 5 milligrams, in my own personal opinion, is a nice medicated dose to start with. The goal here is not to scare anybody, to scare a patient away from trying medical cannabis. So blasting your body, less is more, is the way to go with anything. Not only with cannabis, but we always believe in the homeopathic approach with less is more. Go low and slow and see where your body how it absorbs and how it reacts to medical cannabis.
We were talking about tinctures, and tinctures are a very light oil.
They're either an olive oil base, MCT base, medium chain triglyceride found in coconut oil, or olive oil, coconut oil, grapeseed oil. Some are in alcohol, but we find that a lot of patients don't prefer the alcohol-based tinctures because they might burn a little bit under the tongue. So that's the difference between tinctures and fecal oil. Potencies too. I mean, you're always having a varying amount of potencies. So, but the texture and the way it's utilized is much different. Tinctures is a little dropper bottle. Fecal oil comes in a needleless syringe, very, very thick oil. So that's the difference there.
And for a lot of patients, they prefer tinctures too because they're discreet. They don't smell. You're not burning anything. You're not smoking anything. And they can just do a dropper very similar to like a echinacea dropper bottle that you can put under your tongue.
When you're talking about the fact that they don't smell, if you open up the bottle and smell in it, you will smell something. If it were to open up in your purse and spill, you would smell it. But when you take a tincture as medicine, wherever you are throughout the day, it doesn't radiate into the room where people are going to be knowing what you're doing. So the product does smell, but it doesn't radiate.
There's some great
products out there that are sublingual sprays. There's even nasal sprays. But what is intriguing to us is that they are similar formulations to tinctures, but they're in a spray bottle, but each spritz is exactly 1 milligram. So it helps people to, when they're starting low and slow, engaging their medicine when they're trying to treat a specific disease, or if it's just sleep issues, and they try one spray one night and it's like, didn't really help at all, then 2, then 3, and they realize they got to 3, it was too much, so they go back to 2 because they know what 2 was, and so now they know that 2 milligrams before bed work best for them. Sometimes if they need to ramp up more, say it wasn't working very well at all, then with these companies, you realize you have 5, 6, 7 sprays of one, then instead of using that formulation, you would probably step up to the next potency so that you can use less of the product per night. but they're really interesting companies.
So the topic in the series that came up to, how does THC work? When you say it kills cancer cells, what do you mean by that? We heard self-suicide. We heard the term is actually apoptosis, where it will send cancer cells into self-suicide. There's a great video that you can Google showing cancer cells underneath our microscope, and the scientists injecting THC directly into the cancer cells, and you're actually seeing them dying off. And so that is called apoptosis, self-induced suicide. Our family is proven fact that we have seen cancer cells go into self-suicide with this term apoptosis and THC. So wanted to get that in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that these signals
the cancer cells to go into self-induced suicide, and it's a signaling that has been found.
Great. And then from going into this, finishing up with the apoptosis and going into receptors. You want to talk about receptors, the brain receptors.
There are receptors
throughout our bodies, most abundant in the brain, but also in the immune system. I believe one of our nurses mentioned even in the skin, but throughout the body. And cannabis, whole plant cannabis and cannabinoids work with these receptors in terms of treating disease. So that again is that could be a 1 hour of just talking about receptors and how they work and how they're signaled and what cannabinoids actually work on which receptor. That's really important to know as well.
And actually that will be covered in episode 3 and 4. We have a nurse in episode 3 and a doctor in episode 4, which will cover more into the medical terms of the receptors.
I think maybe this is a good time to interject
a fun fact. What do you think? You want to do a fun fact?
Cannabis was a medicine here in the United States until about 1937, and you'll be surprised with some of these fun facts on who were the top manufacturers of cannabis as a medicine.
The first fun fact I was going to say was there were at least 2,000 cannabis medicines made prior to 1937, produced by over 280 manufacturers. Cannabis was a medicine working very successfully, and quite a few of those companies still exist today. Eli Lilly had 23 cannabis products on the market. Upjohn and Company had 30 different cannabis products. Park Davis, 27. And they were all in the form of capsules, powders, and extractions. Running the gamut, they were listed as treating epilepsy, addiction, cancer, mental illness. So cannabis was being used successfully up until 1937 by large pharmaceutical companies for exactly what we're talking about today. It seems ludicrous that we're fighting for this when we all know the truth. So that's your fun fact. One fun fact. We'll come back to more later.
Thank you for those fun facts. I appreciate you adding in there. I know this will be brought up in episode 6. We get a lot of patients who want to make cannabis oil for their loved one. Either they're from an illegal state or a legal state, but can't get all the equipment when making it, meaning the extraction methods. A lot of people use 190 proof food grade alcohol to make the fecal oil. 190 proof food grade alcohol is also known as Everclear. Some people call it moonshine, but Everclear, 190 proof food grade alcohol. And in a lot of states, I'm going to use Hawaii because we work with a lot of our Hawaiians over there. So aloha to you. But a lot of them are forced. They cannot get Everclear in Hawaii, so they're forced to use other extraction methods, and a lot of them are forced to use isopropyl alcohol, which is rubbing alcohol. And there's a reason why a lot of patients, I'll say a lot of people can't drink it, because they're going to get sick. And so a bottle of isopropyl alcohol is 69 cents, where a bottle of Everclear is, I'm going to say, $30 to $40 for a bottle. So a lot of people are forced to use isopropyl, thinking they're getting the same quality, the same purity, and it's not. And so a lot of people are not. They're wondering why they're calling us saying, "I'm doing this, I'm following these extraction methods, but I'm getting sick." And so we ask them, what are they using? And a lot of times when we talk to our fellow states, men and women over in Hawaii, the ingredient that we're finding that people are using is isopropyl. So I just want to make that clear that isopropyl is not safe to consume.
No.
Especially if you're already immune to compromised and battling cancers and trying to make this at home. So please be careful on that. So again, I wanted to, before we moved on, I know we spoke about it earlier about fecal oil and the different extraction methods, but I just wanted to make that clear that isopropyl alcohol is not what you're looking for. Some other terms. Do you want to go into bud tender? So we've had people ask, what is a bud tender? That was brought up in the series. So you want to touch up on that?
One of the terms is bud tender. I believe they're coming up with better terms now, but they're the people that will be at the counter when you enter a dispensary to buy a product. They have quite an extensive background in cannabis strains and what they can do, but we always warrant patients to get a medical consultation first, because if you go in there and say, I have chronic pain, I'm looking for a medicine with chronic pain. And they'll say, oh, well, we have this, this form, you could patch. They'll give you all the ideas of in what form you could take it. But what they don't know is this cancer bone pain? Is this pain from an injury? Is this pain from an autoimmune condition? On top of that, they don't know your medical history. If you're in pain, you may be on painkillers or opiates. If that's the case, then you would need to titrate down off your pain medications as you add in a cannabis product, and that should be supervised by a medical professional. So while we are happy that there's such knowledgeable people in a dispensary, when it comes to the medical application and specific to one's medical history, it's very, very important to make sure that your medical history is taken into account and any other drugs you may be on. So bud tenders are very knowledgeable in the indicas and sativas and what attributes they have and different applications of cannabis, like we talked about, tinctures, oils, topicals. But in terms of medicine, it's very important. Get your medical consultation before purchasing medicine.
Indica plant is more for pain relief, full body relaxing. A lot of people will say indica in the couch, relaxing, in nighttime. It does help with anxiety. It helps with insomnia. It helps with pain. Helps with muscle spasms. The sativa plant, more upbeat. So a lot of people say indica in the couch, sativa alive state in sun. So being more uplifting, creative. It helps with depression, helps with ADD, helps with fatigue, helps with mood disorders. Mm-hmm. So more of a happiness feeling over the indica plant. Both work extremely well. Mm-hmm. For different patients and their ailments. But I just wanted to bring that up when you're talking about bud tenders and what people go into the dispensaries and asking for.
To take it one step further, it's common that people will utilize a hybrid of the two, depending on the condition, and hybrids are very popular. So I think that's great that you brought that up. Many people wonder if they can be allergic to cannabis. I'm not a medical professional, so I would only give you my educated guess that it's very possible, but there are people having reactions. It's not all that common, but the reaction is called hyperemesis, which is cyclical vomiting, gastro pain, and it's excruciating. People end up in the hospital, and generally we find this with dare I say, chronic users or habitual users. But there's even people who are utilizing it as a medicine that may develop this as well. But we don't know why this happens to some and not others, why it happens to some people decades after or decades into their cannabis use. But it's definitely something to understand when the vomiting starts and the stomach aches, excruciating stomach aches, and you end up in the hospital. The general remedy for this, ironically, is hot water over your abdomen, taking a shower, taking a bath. We talked to quite a few emergency room physicians, and they find that this is the best remedy for that. But hyperemesis is a condition that we're hearing periodically that people get after a long time of chronic use of cannabis.
So I'd like to talk about pretty much a life cycle of cannabinoids. You have THC, which we did mention, the anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, analgesic, antibacteria, and again, does send cancer cells into apoptosis. But the acid form, which was brought up in the docu-series as well, raw cannabis that Dr. William Courtney spoke about with he and his wife Kristen up in Northern California. So THCA is also anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, anti-spasmatic. So how you get THCA? So if you have a cannabis plant, say in your backyard, and you live in a legal state, and you're growing cannabis. It's very similar to like wheatgrass. You can juice it, non-psychoactive, incredible for inflammatory, anti-inflammatory, excuse me, but non-psychoactive again. But not too many people have a cornfield of medical cannabis like Dr. Courtney was fortunate to have, living where he and Christian live. So that is the acid form. So the moment that is heated, it converts into THCA in the raw form. And when it is heated, dried, heated, cooked, smoked, it's converted into THC. The same thing with CBDA. The raw plant matter of the CBD of CBD cannabinoids. So CBDA is great for anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory. The moment that it is dried, heated, cured as well, converts to CBD, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, analgesic, antibacterial, stops cancer cells from spreading, antidepressant. I mean, the list goes on. Antipsychotic.
That's a great topic.
Well, actually, we have some personal friend that has found success with his son. So if you want to share what he's done.
It's not my forte, but I do know via some friends who have explored this. I know some of the studies came from Dr. Piamelli out of UC Irvine, that they're utilizing, I'd say it's 400 to 700 milligrams of CBD. There is a touch of THC, barely any, per day for schizophrenia. And I did have a close friend who had a relative with schizophrenia, and he had been on so many drugs, and they did decide to go the route of this high CBD protocol to see if they could get him off of the other drugs. They were successful, and he was able to hold a job and live quite comfortably. The key, though, to this is consistency. I can speak from my own personal experience with a family member that whether it's psych meds or CBD in certain quantities, consistency is the key. I mean, you can't take it for a few days and then not take it for a couple days. And the same goes for treating cancers and autoimmune conditions. Any condition is consistency, making sure that your loved one or yourself that you are committed to it and taking the proper dosage so that you can realize the results that are possible. So back to the schizophrenia and bipolar, a high milligram dose of CBD we are seeing in the treatment.
It was life-changing for that family. So
yes, it was life-changing.
Other cannabinoids, not as popular, but these were brought up in our docu-series. So, of course, the most talked about is THC, THCA, CBD, CBDA. There's CBGA, also the raw form, analgesic, anti-inflammatory, which converts to CBG. CBG is also anti-cancer, analgesic, antibacterial, bone stimulant, which we've had a lot of success with as well, antidepressant, and antifungal. We also have CBDV as in Victor A, another acid form, also known for anti-inflammatory, which converts into CBDV. I know this is confusing. Anticonvulsive and also bone stimulant as well. So we worked a lot of patients that had brittle bone disease who have found success with this. Cannabis is it's not a one-size-fits-all type of medicine, but people always say, well, does it work on this? Does it work on that? And I've mentioned this before. That I don't want to say it's like duct tape with 1,000,001 uses, but we've seen so many people have turnarounds with this plant, with different ailments, starting from ALS to AIDS to diabetes, heart disease, depression, cancer, and the list does go on and on.
John was talking about the juicing of the plant, which is definitely, gosh, if we had the opportunity to do that, we'd be doing that every day. But back when I didn't know all that much, I was thinking, gosh, if I want to juice, how am I going to calculate growing one plant to the point where I can juice it? And as I consume it down, I'm having to grow the second plant to be in perfect timing when I'm finished with the first plant. And I learned it's so easy, actually. You can grow as many plants as you want, depending on your area. And you can juice it down, just like wheatgrass with a high-powered juicer, and juice it into ice trays. Then you'll know you have 1 cube that can go into your smoothie, and it's ready to go. So you can grow one allotment of plants, juice them all down in one day, juice them into ice trays, and then just grab them from there. I have been told that it's important to make sure that you don't allow your juicing machine to get too hot, because you don't want to decarboxylate, another one of our words actually we didn't go over, and convert those cannabinoids into active psychoactive cannabinoids. So ice trays, I think it's a great idea, and you can do it ahead of time, and still wishing we could do that.
So do you want to talk about, you mentioned decarboxylation. Want to share?
John just talked about, which was the heating of the plant, and in order to activate the cannabinoids to a different medicinal property, you heat it to a certain temperature. So what I always say as a caution is a THCA tincture, which we take every day as an anti-inflammatory. If you were to leave it on your windowsill and it got hot in the summertime, that could quite possibly convert into THC, and then all of a sudden you're taking a tincture that you think is non-psychoactive, but it is now.
We've had patients that started off at THCA, it was fantastic, and then they call a week later and they talk to one of our medical professionals and say that actually they were feeling psychoactive effect, and they were only on the THCA, which our medical professional recommended. And they asked, where are you storing it? Well, I just have it in my kitchen window. Some people have had it in their purses that they've left in the car if they've gone into the gym or going to a store. Yeah. Not leaving their purse, but leaving a bag in their car, where we know it does get hot in there. So it has converted into THC. Next thing you know, they're taking this non-psychoactive, thinking they're taking a non-psychoactive sublingual, and now they're feeling something. So,
yes, here was a fun fact that I found. Between the years 1840 and 1900, there were over 100 published papers in the Western medical literature recommending cannabis for various illnesses, such as I mentioned before, epilepsy, addiction, cancer, mental illness, autoimmune, They actually mentioned women's issues. My guess is that is through the menstrual cycle. They talked about quite a bit. I read this morning that it was utilized during labor and before childbirth. So I wanted to emphasize that in this list, mentioning addiction between 1840 and 1900 is significant, using cannabis for that as an exit drug. So that was one of my favorites. I just didn't want to miss it.
So moving on to the next one.
People will call and say, I need to get CBDs, plural, CBDs. So we need to kind of reel it back a little bit and talk about CBD is one molecule in the cannabis plant. When you want to talk about whole plant treatment, it's not referred to as CBDs. It's referred to as whole plant treatment, whole plant cannabis treatment, fecal oil. But we, the professionals in this field, whether it's product makers, whether it's physicians who are helping a patient through the process, to consultants in our office, the terminology CBDs does not exist because there's one molecule, CBD, cannabidiol. But then there's whole plant treatment, which is cannabinoids, not CBDs. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear because it ends up taking about 10, 15 minutes to re-explain everything to each other. And we don't know if somebody's calling saying they definitely want a CBD product, but they're saying CBDs. So I just kind of needed to make that clear so that the process is much more streamlined for you or your loved one. And whole plant cannabis medicine is the way to go.
People think, I want the medical portion of the cannabis plant. I don't want any psychoactive feeling. So I want the medical part of the cannabis plant, which is a big confusion, which led us into the entourage effects, which we spoke about earlier. But THC isn't bad. I don't want people to think that THC is the bad portion of the cannabis plant or the unnecessary portion. Yes, it has a psychoactive element to it, but it has also been proven, as I mentioned before, to kill cancer cells. So THC is not bad. CBD, a lot of people think CBD is the medical portion of the cannabis plant. Not true at all. And so CBD, in concert together, they work incredibly, even with the epileptic children. And a lot of these CBD only states, I think they're doing a major disservice for patients. A lot of patients that are taking CBD for epilepsy, even with cannabis or hemp, it works on about 10% of patients. Add a little THC, not enough for a psychoactive effect, will show a higher success with the epileptic patients, up to about 70%, just with a minute amount of THC. So THC is beneficial when treating epilepsy and other different types of diseases as well. So I don't want people to be standoffish thinking that CBD is the good portion of the cannabis plant and THC is not.
We were listening to a radio show in the car. I will say it was a sports talk radio, and they were talking about the medicinal side of the plant, meaning CBD, and we're not talking about the part that gets you high. And John and I were tearing our hair out because we were trying to figure out a way to call the station because their information was so incorrect and misleading, and they just kept over and over talking about CBD being the medical side of the plant. And as we spoke before about the entourage effect and everything working in concert with each other, it's not just THC and CBD, it's all the subcannabinoids and terpenoids and flavonoids that work together to make this medicine. And secondly, I wanted to say, we in our nation are so hyper fixated on this psychoactive effect. And I don't want to be high. I do understand not wanting to be high, but look at all the pharmaceuticals that are psychoactive. Look at all the pharmaceuticals that you can't drive if you're taking them. Opiates, morphine, methadone. I mean, the list goes on, and not even to mention psych meds. There are so many side effects to psych meds. And yet we're so fixated on THC and how it makes you high. I know firsthand from a family member in terms of psych meds that not only does it affect your head, but it affects your liver, and you have to have your liver function tested quite a bit to make sure that you're not harming your liver. And so for this reason is why I get so frustrated at people being fixated on THC getting you high. If you take the proper formulation, proper dosage, understand how to go low and slow, as you mentioned, and if you get to the point where you feel a tinge of something psychoactive, then you know to just back off from there and stay right there. So I just wanted to interject that because it was important to me.
Good. Thank you for that. And I think it's really important when it comes to finding the correct dosage is getting your doctor involved. Not only, if you live in a legal state or not, always ask your doctor, and hopefully he or she is educated on the endocannabinoid system. Hopefully they're also educated on medical cannabis as a medicine, or cannabis as a medicine. It's good to have guidance in dosing. Formulations are support is really important. And again, a drug-to-drug interaction. A lot of patients asked about drug-to-drug interactions and how it can intensify a pharmaceutical up to 3 times the effect. And so I don't want people to think that you can combine, just like you wouldn't combine alcohol in a pharmaceutical. Be careful if you're combining pharmaceuticals with cannabis as well. You could have the same type of effect. People always ask, you hear the term, has anybody died? Are there any deaths? And I'm going to throw in a cannabis fun fact if you want to say. I'll do a fun fact here, which Dr. Sulak, who is a good friend of ours, he is on our board, but he always, I would say, starts off one of our seminars, or starts off speaking at a seminar, but about 0 deaths or overdose. And he says, did you know to overdose on cannabis, you need to smoke about 1,500 pounds in about 15 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
And so I don't know too many people that can ingest 1,500 pounds in under 15 minutes. But I just want people to know that there are no reported deaths just from consuming cannabis or overdoses.
Typically, they have combined it either with alcohol or some other type of medicine, I would say, whether it's legal or not legal. The only things that we have seen with some people with the improper formulation and dosing is heart racing, and that is easily remedied if you have medical guidance. And the other thing I wanted to say on a side note, we've heard that while we talk about CBD being non-psychoactive, there are some rare cases where a patient says, oh my gosh, and that's all they're taking is a CBD product, and they are higher than a kite. So again, this goes back to starting low and slow. Everybody responds differently. It's very, very important to be patient and to find your therapeutic window and stay there and not vary from that at all. So you may be one of those people that gets a psychoactive effect from CBD. Most likely not, but it's good to keep that in the back of your mind that it's possible. It's also very important to understand if you have a loved one who is a senior and you're seeking out treatment for that patient, or it could just be somebody who's in extremely weakened condition heading into cannabis protocol. I'm not trying to offer any scare tactic, but what I'm trying to say is it's best to, when you're first trying it, to have them not be alone. If it's somebody who reacts to CBD, and it would be a surprise, yes, of course, but you would want somebody there. If my father, when he was trying cannabis, we wouldn't have had him try this cannabis oil that is very strong by himself. When he would get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, he could be a little wobbly because he had been in the wasting stages of his cancer. So we don't like people trying it alone. just in the initial stages, because we don't know how that person's body will react.
And coming from that side of dosing and formulations, a lot of people will read on the internet or see on the internet that more is better. And, a lot of people say take a gram a day. In our personal opinion,
and the specialists that work with us.
And the specialists that work with us, that's overkill. Your body can only take so much. So for example, back to my father-in-law, if he would have followed that guideline 6+ years ago, and it would have taken a gram a day, he would have slept straight through for days, but he wouldn't have had any nutrition. We came across a study that showed 40% of cancer patients pass a malnutrition before cancer attacks his body, before cancer itself. And so we went minute amounts. A lot of people in this field say use the term rice grain, and where that derived from, I have no idea. Where that popped up from, I don't have any idea. But just give you an idea, there are about 16 grains of rice in a gram of oil. 16 grains of rice in a gram of oil. And what type of rice is it? Is it white rice?
Short grain? Wild rice?
Brown rice? So that right there, that's kind of confusing for a lot of patients. But also two, just give you an idea where my father-in-law he took a half a grain of rice. And he's never half a grain of rice over a gram, which is 16 grains of rice. So he has never exceeded a half a grain of rice.
So I'll interject here a bit about this rice grains and a gram a day. We do know now, and we've mentioned before, that there's a therapeutic window. And so a lot of our goals and our missions are to make sure that patients are well taken care of and streamlined directly to their proper formulation, dosing, and potency for their body. And we just are trying to also help you to not spend too much money. There's a lot of people trying to sell a lot of oil in your first purchase. Oh, you need to take X amount of grams in 90 days. And then you buy that. It's one formulation. Then you buy that and you're trying to ramp up. It is quite a challenge because it's very psychoactive. But then again, what happens in that first week where your body might react totally differently. Maybe there needs to be adjustment. Maybe that formulation is incorrect. So this whole gram a day, which would cost a lot of money. That's a lot of product to buy if you're taking a gram a day. And if you can find that sweet spot in the therapeutic window for you and spend half the amount of money, that's the best way to go. That's the best way that a patient can be taken care of. That's the compassionate route. There's no need to oversell anybody anything. So again, proceed with caution, ask a lot of questions, and that's why we're going over these terms.
With your father, he had a 10-gram syringe of his fecal oil. And just give you an idea how minute dosing he had, his 10-gram syringe lasted him 2.5 months. Sometimes even 3 months. Mm-hmm. He took minute amounts, and our outcome has been successful. He's 83.5 right now, and still doing well. We were in Montana for a family vacation, and the town that we were staying in is they say 600. I think it's around 200 people. And our neighboring town, which has a stoplight, just to give you an idea of the size of the town, they have about, let's say, 1,500 people in there. So we went to dinner, and we walked out of the restaurant, and it's a ghost town. When I say ghost town, it's 6 p.m. in a ghost town. And we come out of the restaurant, and we start walking back to our car, and this woman who's walking on the sidewalk walks by and stops and looks at us and says, "What are you doing here?"
We don't know her.
We don't know her. What are we doing here? And so she says, "Wait, I just watched you guys last night. What are you doing in Montana?" And so we said, "You actually recognized us?" And so Stan
Well, she saw us, and then she saw my parents come out of
the restaurant, and she says, "I knew it then. I saw the four of you. I knew it. I knew it."
So Stan had a big chuckle on his face, and
he did.
He said, "It's me. It's me." So he's a little celebrity here.
I have to say that when my dad hears, we'll read him some of the emails, and he gets choked up because he thinks it's so special that, well, not only his story has gone around the world a few times, but what led us into what we do. And he feels very touched from many all over the world. And so I'll offer a great thank you from my father as well.
So, so again, I appreciate you spending this last hour with us.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed being with us for this informative first webinar of our webinar series. We shared enlightening information about the basics, common terms, and uses of the sacred plant. We learned detailed information about the entourage effect, how various compounds in cannabis like THC, CBD, and terpenes are used together in different ratios to achieve life-changing and even life-saving benefits of the sacred plant. And we learned about how THC in cannabis works to kill cancer cells, a process called apoptosis. We also learned some enlightening and entertaining fun facts in addition to explaining the basics and common terms and uses. Please join us tomorrow for Webinar 2 entitled Learn the Current Laws, Don't Risk Your Freedom. We'll be joined by attorney Lauren Mendelson and her partner Omar Figueroa from the law offices of Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa is an expert in cannabis law and compliance and a pioneer cannabis lawyer with more than 18 years experience providing legal counsel and representation to medical cannabis patients and members of the cannabis industry. Navigating the complex laws to legally access a sacred plant is crucial if you want to use a sacred plant and stay out of jail. It's truly sad that we have to go through this to heal ourselves naturally, but unfortunately it's the reality of our federal laws at this moment. It's truly best to be informed than not to be. When you're informed, you are empowered. I look forward to seeing you for tomorrow's webinar. Thank you and God bless.